Tonight we're here at the Hammarskjold Performing Arts Center for the final installment of Parent University. Tonight's topic is on opiate addiction and where we're moving forward. We have a guest speaker this evening by the name of Rory Wells. He's the Community Relations Officer for the Ocean County Prosecutor's Office, where he is an assistant prosecutor in the Prosecutor's Office Division. Tonight, the event obviously was sponsored by the East Brunswick Board of Education in conjunction with the East Brunswick Municipal Alliance. And then on top of that, it was sponsored by the East Brunswick Education Association. Really, it was a message of hope. It was a discussion to parents about the current epidemic that we're having with opiate abuse and or the problem we're facing with addiction. But it was also a message to parents of trying to really get across to your kids and how to speak to your kids about drug and alcohol abuse or any other drugs that they're using, and where to move forward from here. You know, how we can best not only go back to our families and address the problem, but really have a conversation with other people in the community to help resolve this problem throughout the state of New Jersey.
Okay, good evening, everyone. My name is Danielle Blaylock. I'm the Supervisor of Student Services in East Brunswick, and I'm also a long-standing member of the Municipal Alliance for the Prevention of Drug and Alcohol Abuse in East Brunswick. As someone who grew up in town and went through the school district and now works with the counseling staff and the nursing staff and the health department, it's a really important topic to me and something I'm passionate about. So I'm really proud and happy that we were able to work with the Municipal Alliance and EVEA and get the support of Dr. Valesky, our superintendent, as well as our Board of Education to bring a topic of such importance to Parent University. So thank you for coming. And I'm going to turn it over to Jen.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Stetson. I'm the coordinator for the East Brunswick Municipal Alliance. Just so you know, if you ever want to look on the website, the township website for the Alliance, you're welcome to come to any meeting. If you have questions, concerns, you're welcome to call the office. We're happy to give you out our calendar, put you in contact with people if you want more education, need more information. I want to first of all say thank you to Rory Wells for agreeing to join us today. I want to introduce our speaker. This is Rory Wells, who's from the Ocean County Prosecutor's Office. He is the Community Relations Officer from Ocean County. So without further ado, here's Rory Wells.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you very much. Well, I'm glad to be here, and even more importantly, I'm glad you're here. I'm going to introduce myself a little bit, and then we'll talk about something that's very, very important, and hopefully you guys will get something of value out of tonight. This isn't just another war story night. I'm not here to scare you to death or anything like that. I'm here to give you practical information that I think you should be able to use, either whether you're talking with your own children, young people in general, or others who are in your circle of influence. Now, I am an Ocean County prosecutor. I'm an assistant prosecutor, and I've been with the office about 12 years. I've handled a number of cases, both juvenile and adult. I've tried a few cases, jury trials, but most of my work had been really just prosecuting and handling the cases in court and in grand jury and in the juvenile unit. So I'm very familiar with our office and what we've been doing in our county and those sorts of things. And over the years, I've literally handled hundreds and hundreds of cases, especially as it pertains to juveniles. So not only have I handled those matters, but I also speak regularly throughout my county and throughout the state. So over the last year, I've easily spoken to, without exaggeration, probably 8,000 to 10,000 young people. I've done hundreds of school assemblies. So I have a pretty good feel about young people and what they're doing and pop culture and what's going on, which helps me when I'm talking to young people. And I always appreciate when I can get some parents, because I want to give them information that I know that they may not get from, their kids. So in addition to being an assistant prosecutor, this year I was selected as co-chair for the DART Coalition. And the DART Coalition is part of RWJ Barnabas Healthcare System Institute for Prevention. And it's mainly Ocean County based, but we have others who will come and come to our meetings. Our general meetings, they're held way down in Lacey, so I'm not sure if anyone wanted to participate. You certainly could. You're welcome to. But in our county, we have a coalition of business people, elected officials, teachers, counselors, service providers that meet every other month and discuss this topic regularly, in addition to all the other folks that are working on this problem in our county and throughout the state. So we're very, very active. And I just wanted to put that out there because I'm very excited that I was selected to be co-chair of this group. And if you want more information, just Google RWJ Barnabas. Oh, yes, Tracy.
There's 17 county coalitions, just like the Ocean County one. So Middlesex County has the same coalition.
Right.
Based out of Wellspring, Barbie up there operates it. There's an opportunity to get involved.
Awesome. Okay. So please stop by the table because, as Tracy reminded me, she works for DART Coalition. And thank you. There's 17 coalitions throughout the state like the DART Coalition, and yours is here. So make sure you stop by and get involved. It's important. If you're going to, listen, you're here. This is your community. These are your folks. You don't have to kill yourself, but an hour or two a week or an hour or two a month really helps. It really helps. So when we talk about the opiate epidemic, generally you're talking about prescription pills or heroin. And you hear a lot about both on the news and in the papers and those sorts of things. And a couple of things about where we are. First of all, we did not get here where we are with this epidemic overnight. So we are not going to fix this problem overnight. And you have to take a long-term view towards solving the problem. So understand what I'm saying. Once the problem gets blown up and everybody says, we've got a drug problem, we've got an opiate problem, everybody's overdosing, we're taking casualties, things are terrible, let's start throwing resource at it. The politicians come, everybody starts coming, we're throwing all this attention at it. That doesn't mean in 6 months the problem is going to go away. It did not take us 6 months to get here. So when you're looking at this problem, when you're talking about this problem with your children or with your agencies or whoever you're involved with, you have to understand that this is a long-term conversation and it's a long-term fight. For us in Ocean County, several years ago, we had at one point 56 overdose deaths, and steadily, with the exception of 1 year, our numbers have increased. To 2016, we had 205 overdose deaths in Ocean County last year. Now, that number is probably a bit misleading because with the adoption of naloxone and a lot of officers and first responders now having the Narcan application, there are a number of people who were given that application and their overdose was reversed and they didn't pass away. So in Ocean County, we Narcaned over 500 people last year. So if you look at the problem and say, well, we had 205 people overdose in my county, but we also Narcaned over 500 people. Some of them are multiples. Some of them would have been multiple applications. But even on a conservative basis, if we had lost 100 of those 500, that would have easily put our totals well over 300. So as I stand here tonight, I want you to know one thing. Now that the problem is getting the attention that it deserves, we still have not hit the high point. It has not peaked. We are increasing, which means it's going to get worse before it gets better. And I do a lot of training and talking to police officers about this matter and about a number of different things. And I tell them when you're working with kids in the school, when you're doing things with your program, when you're working on an alliance, you can't get cynical. You have to understand, you're going to hear, it's getting worse, it's getting worse, it's getting worse, and you're going to feel like nothing I'm doing is working. But that is not the truth. Because when we come to events like this is a prevention event, right? I'm giving you information and education so you can understand what's going on. There's vendors, there's tables out there. We're fighting the fight for the year after the year after the year. This is 5 years from now, right? So if you have a middle school student, we want them to make the wise decision when they're a 12th grader or their first year in college, when their roommate comes in and says, hey, I got some weed, do you want to smoke, right? It's not necessarily the fight for today. And we are fighting today's fight. But I want you to understand this is a long-term fight. You can't give up, and you cannot be cynical, because it's going to get worse before it gets better. But your actions are for long-term success. So when you're talking to your young people, when you're talking to your family members, and this is my gig, because I go to a lot of events, and I hear a lot of people talk about the drug problem, and I hear a lot of people talk about what's going on in the state and what's going on in the country. And I'm generally an optimist. Even while the whole house is burning down, somebody has to say, well, listen, do you think we can actually turn this around at some point? Because if you never think you're going to be able to turn it around, you will never turn it around. Does that make sense? I hope so. I know the numbers are bad. The last number I had heard, in the state, there's estimated 128,000 people that are addicted to opiates and heroin in the state. Now, we have probably 8.9 million people. In the state of New Jersey, we have 21 counties. And when you look at a number, if that's the number, 128,000 people, you figure that number has to be multiplied immediately because they have family members, right? So it's not going to just affect the person who has become addicted to the drugs. They're going to have immediate friends and family and loved ones who are directly affected by their actions. When somebody ultimately goes down this path and has trouble, and you see stuff start coming out of the home, and the brother's PlayStation is stolen, and the jewelry is stolen, and the pocketbook has to get locked up, and all of that has a direct effect on those people around who are living or trying to deal with that addict. So the problem, whatever the number is magnified because it's not isolated to just the addict. Okay, does that make sense? I hope so. When you look at this problem, and just a few things, I have to, because I'm here, I recognize we're in Middlesex County, and I know you have a lot of good people working on this problem here. In Ocean County, I don't know why our numbers were so disproportionately high based on our county and where we are, but that's just where we are. And for us, we've done a number of things that were really innovative in our response to this opiate epidemic. So we've done a number of dog searches in schools. We've created a number of programs. We were way out front with the Narcan. We were way out front with the recovery specialist, recovery coach programs. A number of different programs in Ocean County have been helping, but it's hard when you see the numbers still increasing, even though you're still trying to make a difference. And you're going to see that in your county as well. It's not just a one area fight. In Ocean County, for example, on the law enforcement side, we have been prosecuting offenders that we caught as drug dealers with the statute for strict liability for drug-induced death. And that says if you are the drug dealer, we're going to hold you criminally responsible for that person that overdoses on your drugs. You're going to be responsible for that body criminally. And it's a first-degree charge as opposed to a third-degree charge where you may just be selling some number of pills, a small number of pills, a small number of heroin, or a small amount of heroin, rather. But when we add that charge, and we've prosecuted, I believe we've initiated over 30 cases the last 2 or 3 years or so with that statute. It helps us to resolve cases faster and to get a better result for us. I say that because I just wanted to throw out a couple of things that we're doing in Ocean County in response, just because I have to represent, of course, my office as well. But when you look at this topic in this area, there's a number of different areas that you have to look at. There's the prevention side, which for me is the most important side. It may be different for somebody else. There's the law enforcement side, and then there's the recovery and the long-term aspect of this drug problem. So you're dealing with, some people are going to be working with prevention and children and teaching and instruction. There's law enforcement officers doing what they're doing. And then there's a lot of people who are dealing with the problem of detox beds, rehab beds, and those sorts of things. And it's going to take a number of different people in the community working in all of these areas. Obviously, we know, I mean, you've heard it said a million times before, law enforcement can't arrest your way out of this problem. It's a community problem. So we put a lot of pressure on our law enforcement officers, but the bottom line is they can't do it by themselves. It's just not possible. And for me, I really emphasize the prevention aspect. I don't want you to come to this evening's seminar or this evening's talk and leave and forget and just be like, well, that was informative, or oh my gosh, or whatever the case. I want you to actually go home or throughout the week and dialogue with somebody, anybody, a young person, a coworker, about the problem, because that's really what has to start. And a small number of people who really care and are dedicated can really do amazing things. I believe that. And, if you haven't been able to tell, despite the fact that we really are in a very difficult situation, I believe we're going to turn this around. It's just, unfortunately, we've been taking a lot of casualties while we've been going through this problem. We've lost a lot of people. And there are a lot of people struggling now who are trying to get their life back and regain control of their life. Some of them might make it, some of them might not. I think one of the good things is that we're here and we're discussing this, and I want you to carry on the conversation and the discussion further. Talk to somebody. Hey, we had somebody from the prosecutor's office come and talk about this. What do you think? What do you know? Everybody in here has been affected by drugs in some way, shape, or form, not necessarily just heroin or opiates. I mean, it's pervasive. We, as unfortunately Americans, we like to get high on whatever it may be. Weed, coke, heroin, alcohol, nicotine, whatever it is. And unfortunately, with all these great freedoms we have, a lot of the times we have to accept the good with the bad. But I think that we can actually minimize the numbers. I believe that. Now, are we ever going to get rid of drugs? I hope I'm not sounding a little preachy here, but are we ever going to get rid of drugs and drug use and drug abuse in our society 100%? Of course not. Of course not. But can we minimize that problem in our society, in our community? Yes. Yes, we can. We had 205 overdose deaths in 2016. So if you came back and said, Rory, in 2 years we dropped that number to 25, would you take that as a win? Of course. Right? So if we drop that number, that means we have so many less crimes in our community, because a lot of people who are addicted to drugs commit crimes and they have a spillover effect in other areas, lost productivity on work, healthcare costs. It affects, it ripples throughout the whole community. So I tell you that because I come here and I don't want to just, like I said, my talk wasn't going to come here and just crush you with all these terrible statistics about how bad it is out there, because it is bad. And I'm telling you, it's going to get worse. But I can't have you come here and leave and say, this is terrible, we're never going to win it. Why would I even try? I have to make you understand that, one, it's good that you're even coming here, right? And that you want to learn and understand what the danger is, what's going on. There's people you can talk to. There's resources here in your community that you might not have been aware of. But two, you have to stay with the position that, you know what, we're going to make a difference. East Brunswick is going to be different, right? Our schools are going to be different. Our family and our children and the people we care about, it's going to be different here. But you have to actually believe that before it can come into existence. Now, a couple points about talking to young people. And I want to hit you with the good stuff. And if you've got questions, I'll stay, as long as you need me. But here's some advice when talking with young people, your kids or your nephews or nieces or grandsons or granddaughters. First of all, this generation is different, obviously. You have the millennials, you have the Gen Xers, and you have the baby boomers. But post-millennials, those that are still in school now, I always advise parents, you got to be careful. Don't start telling them how you had it much worse when you were growing up than they did. Because, first of all, they do have a lot of things of convenience, and everybody carries a computer in their pocket now. And we have access and resources and things that most parents wouldn't have had when they were in middle school and high school. But it is very, very difficult. There is a lot of stress and anxiety placed on this generation now. And when you were in middle school, you didn't see people beheading people on TV and YouTube. And you didn't see people being lit up on fire. And we may have gone through economic trouble, and we may have gone through war, and we may have gone through a number of different things in our communities, but not at the same time. Not at the same time. If you're 15 years old, you realize that you've lived in a country that you've never known that was united. Politically, we've been separated probably for the last 3 presidents. So when you start talking to a young person and you start telling them that it was much more difficult when I grew up than you're growing up now, there may have been some differences, but our challenges were our challenges, and their challenges are their challenges. And you have to respect that. And this is just my advice, because I talk to them quite a bit. And here's another just point that I want you to take when you're speaking with your young kids. Transparency gives you credibility. Transparency gives you credibility. They're in a generation now where automatic authority isn't just given like it used to be. There's not that general respect for the police officer just because he's in a uniform, or a pastor, or a rabbi, or a big leader in society. They're going to wait and judge you based on your interactions with them. And at that point, you need to know transparency gives you credibility. The old, just do so because I said so, is completely useless to this generation. And if you're a parent and you say, if you ever do drugs, I'm going to kill you, they know a couple of things. First of all, you're not going to kill them. So now you've discounted. They know, well, my parents will really be mad, but I don't know. And you haven't had a full discussion about the implications of experimenting with drugs, some of the friends that you've lost, how it's impacted people you know. That's the conversation you need to have. Not the, don't do drugs, I'm going to kill you. You need to be transparent. Because what you want to do when you're talking with your young people about drugs, and this is important, because heroin is not a starter drug. People don't start off going and buying heroin. You get to heroin through other drugs. You get to heroin because of multiple bad decisions. You went to the party. You started smoking weed. You were at your aunt's house or your grandmother's house, and you got into the liquor cabinet in the basement, and you started drinking. And people were drinking and smoking, and then one day somebody showed up with pills. Or then one day you were out in the back lot or wherever you were, and somebody showed up with cocaine or whatever it may be. So if I go and talk to a group of high schoolers and I start telling them how heroin is bad, it's not a starter drug. They're not going to say, oh, well, what are they going to say? Well, I'm never going to do heroin. Everybody in this room, we've all said, I don't see how anybody can inject that into my veins. Right? And you can smoke it, you can snort it, and you can inject it. But you have to understand, it's not the actual, when you get to heroin, it's because you've made quite a few bad decisions to get to that point. And that's the conversation where you have to have with your young people, is about all of those decisions leading up to that. Does that make sense? And the conversation that you want to have is about decision making, because they're not going to decide to do the drugs when they're standing next to you in the mall. The challenge is going to come when you're not there and they're in their dorm room, or when they're not near you, and it's going to be somebody that they know, just like you. You were offered drugs, just like you. It's going to be a friend, a cousin, a brother, somebody you like and respect is going to be the first person that says, hey, you want to smoke? And this is what I talk to young people about. And I tell them, it's coming. You're going to be asked to do drugs. And you know what? It's going to be somebody you like. And it's going to be a friend or a cousin. And you're not going to expect it. And you might get the butterflies a little bit. And that's where you need to have the courage to say no. Because it's never the boogeyman that walks off the street that's some stranger that says, hey, you want to do drugs. That's not how it is, but we don't have that conversation like we should. We don't tell them it's coming, but it's coming. It's going to be from a friend or a relative. You know, or you're going to be hanging out with a group of people, and it's just going to show up, and everybody's going to try it, and they're going to want you to try it, and now the pressure is on. Are you going to get out of there? And it helps if you know it's coming before it comes. So I just want you to understand a couple of things. Don't knock what young people are going through today and their challenges. They're very, very difficult. It's a lot more difficult sometimes when you have access to everything and to say no than when, when I was in high school, we knew like there was a couple kids, the bad kids who sold weed. And, if I wanted to get a weapon or something like that, that took effort. It doesn't take effort to get anything now. You can get anything easily within a couple of hours. So the question is, do I do it or not? There's not really a deterrence there. And what I think when I speak to parents is, what I think helps them is you have to actually help them with their decision-making process. You have to strengthen their decision-making process. And remember what I said, transparency gives you credibility. You have to tell them, these are some of the bad decisions I've made. These are some of the good decisions I made. I love you. I can't stop you. If you're going to make these, if you're going to experiment this stuff when we're not here, how am I going to stop you? But this is why I want you to choose the right thing. Our family loves you. I'm trying to lift you up so that you can lift us up. And you have that conversation. All the things that you think about and you feel inside, tell them. Because that's what's going to help them make the decision whether they want to live a happy, sober, healthy life. Not, don't do drugs or I'll kill you. Right? Drugs are bad for you, right? And a lot of parents will tell them, because they know weed's a big problem too. And I know we're talking about the heroin and the opiate epidemic. And a lot of parents, they talk about weed, and for kids, a lot of their friends smoke weed. And they'll come and they'll say, and they don't think it's a big deal. And when I talk to young people, I say, you know what? Listen, whether you think it's a big deal or not, is that going to help you have an incredibly successful life? If it doesn't help you, make you better, why would you do it? And you have a bigger, broader conversation. Now, the weed today is more powerful. The drugs are more powerful. And with young, developing minds, it does have a negative effect. It could lead to psychosis and some other things that are really terrible. That's different from the 40-year-old who wants to smoke a joint on the weekends in his house. Oh, drugs should be legal. I'm not talking about you. I'm talking about the 16-year-old who hasn't started his life yet, who's now deciding whether I should start smoking weed on a regular basis or not. That's the person I'm worried about. And for you all, you got to actually have that conversation. Talk to them about it. Talk to them about why I don't want you to do this. I want the best for you. You can do anything you want. There's incredible opportunities. We've had our challenges as our family. I've made mistakes in my life. But I want the best for you. This is why I don't want you choosing drugs. Because remember what I said before. This is all connected. A lot of the times when you're at a party and the weed comes out and the alcohol comes out, you're in a situation where other drugs may appear or additional bad decisions happen. It comes by compounding bad decision. This bad decision, usually you can recover. If you make one bad decision, you can recover. But then when you make a second bad decision, and then a third bad decision, and now all of a sudden you end up in a car and there's drugs in the car, or you're at a party, or somebody's been taken advantage of because they got high, or whatever the case may be, or now they've developed an addiction. That is from multiple bad decisions. And I want you to strengthen your young people, and strengthen not just your young people, just strengthen the people in your community. We as a community, we're going to stick together. We're going to make sure that our community, 10 years from now, we're going to look back and we're going to know if it worked, right? We're going to know 5 years from now if what we did helped or hurt. We're going to know if the community continues to go like this or if it continues to go down. We don't know. And I know there's a lot of great people in this community, and my in-laws live right next in the next town over. So I'm familiar with it. I shop in your malls. I eat in town. And I was very, very warmly received here, and I loved it. But you all take ownership. Take ownership of the community for as long as you're here. And have those conversations and believe, you know what, we are going through a difficult time in this community, in this county, and in our state. But it shouldn't always be like that because we have good people that are working on the problem. And at some point, we'll turn the corner. But for me, and my thing is, let's hit the young people and give them the best decision so we're not fighting this same fight 5 years from now. Okay, the heroin epidemic, it's different. We've lived through other epidemics. Some of you are old enough. You remember the crack epidemic. The crack epidemic was 84, 85, went to like 91. There were a lot of casualties. A lot of people got locked up. A lot of people died. I don't even know what we did. Did we win it? I don't know. It came. Everything comes in seasons. Now we're in another epidemic. It's not primarily just young black kids in urban areas, right? There's a lot of blonde, white, 17-year-olds that get addicted to this drug, heroin and pills and those sorts of things. It ranges the age. You have 80-year-olds, you have 17-year-olds, you have 30-year-olds, you have teachers, you have lawyers, you have doctors. Remember what I said, heroin is typically not a starter drug. And a lot of people get there through prescription pills. And what you see on the street, one prescription pill, an Oxy 30, on the street might be $25 or $30. I don't know, it depends on the area and the time and those sorts of things. Well, let's say one pill, between $20 and $30. Well, one hit of heroin in my county is about $4.50 or $5. So if you've gotten addicted to pills and at some point the doctor cuts you off or you can't sustain it and you're buying pills on the street and now you can't afford it, at some point a lot of people unfortunately end up going to heroin. And we've seen this increased numbers, this explosion really. I think the rise was 22% in 16 from the year before, from 2015. And all the numbers are, you can find the numbers in the Attorney General's office and different stats. The CDC, Center for Disease Controls, has stats nationwide where the rise of this problem came, and it's not focused on one particular cultural or ethnic group. It's widespread, different socioeconomic statuses, different races, different ages, and it's vast. And for us, we live on the coast, and in New Jersey, if you don't know, unfortunately, our heroin is very, very pure. We have some of the most pure heroin in the entire country, which is a more powerful high. So if you're addicted, the chances of you getting addicted to heroin, I don't know, it works out. It's different for everybody. I know that. And I'm speaking somewhat in generalities, so I don't want to get too far out on the limb. But obviously, if you have a more pure drug, a more powerful drug in one area of the country, that will have different effects than other areas of the country. Last point regarding the heroin. One of the problems that we've seen is this rise of fentanyl. And fentanyl is a synthetic as well. And they've been cutting the heroin with the fentanyl. Now, if you are addicted to heroin or opiates, and you overdose on an opiate, it's cutting the oxygen off to your brain. And what Narcan does, naloxone, it reverses that. And it immediately jumps on the receptors and opens it up and allows you to breathe again, or allows you to recover from your high. And what people tell me a lot of the times when they're Narcan, they'll come out just like that. And they'll be able to talk and those sorts of things. Whereas, 5 minutes ago they were dying. Now they're back. Well, the problem is we have that Narcan and the naloxone program to help people that are ODing, on opiates. But if you have fentanyl, if you're ODing on fentanyl, that will not help you. And we've seen a rise and an increase. It's unfortunate because, what do you see? You get one devil in the door with the heroin, and you just start trying to find ways to defeat it and beat it back. And then here comes fentanyl. And if you're overdosing on fentanyl, Narcan is not going to help you. And we've seen, I think my prosecutor had said, of the opiate overdose deaths, I think 60% of them were fentanyl related or had fentanyl in Ocean County. So there's just yet another problem that we're going to have to deal with. As soon as we think we have something that helps really help people that are in trouble or overdosing, whether they're going to get help or not, that's a whole nother battle. But you have to be very careful, and a lot of times there'll be a bad batch. Fentanyl is very, very, very powerful. It's 50 times more powerful than the heroin. So a small amount mixed in with the heroin can cause a lot of damage. And listen, they're not mixing this stuff up in labs, right? You don't know if you buy it from your dealer one day, it's going to have so much fentanyl in it, or if you buy from another dealer, that may have a little bit more, or if this one changes their mix, they need more customers, they want a stronger high, or whatever the case may be, or you go to a 30-day rehab or a 60-day rehab, you come home and you relapse and you take something that's stronger, you don't know it, it's your same dealer, but it's laced with fentanyl, then you could be obviously in big trouble and could lead to an overdose death. So I tell you that because it's just something to know. If you hear the word fentanyl, it is a synthetic drug and it is mixed with heroin and it's causing a lot of problems, and we've seen it on the rise greatly throughout the state of New Jersey, not just in Ocean County. So I'm certain you've seen it in your county as well. Just before I take a couple questions, or we can continue the dialogue, I want to emphasize, because this is the most important part of my whole talk to you all. Like I said, I didn't want to come and just drop all these bad statistics and have you leave and talk about, well, this was terrible. When you're talking to your young people, remember a couple of things. Please don't judge their upbringing based on your upbringing. And even if you did have it harder than your kids, that's not the way to start the conversation. Because for them, what if my father or my grandfather said, when I went to school, I had to walk, or we drove a horse, now you got cars. And I'm like, okay, cool. Like, it still wouldn't mean anything to me. It's not like, are you going to get me out there and make me ride a horse to school? Like, it doesn't mean anything to me. So when you sit there and you start talking about your upbringing and you've moved and you don't live in the same place and your family has elevated a little bit, and you're telling them about the bad old days, it's not something that, just save your breath. All right? Just save your breath. So be careful with judging them based on what their challenges are and what they're going through with their life and their pressures and their stresses. Because when you say that, you discount what they're going through. When you say, I had it much harder than you did when I was your age, now it says, well, I can't really talk to you because you've just discounted everything that I have going on in my mind. You don't know about the pressures. You don't know about social media and all of that stuff. I need to go find somebody that relates. And the second point was transparency gives you credibility. Don't just throw out authoritative statements. Talk to them about the mistakes you've made and the victories you've had. This was a good decision because we made this decision as a family and it worked out because. And you want to strengthen their decision-making process. We want you to choose to stay sober and safe and happy and have an incredible life. There's nothing that you can't accomplish. Those sorts of things will help you when you're speaking to young people. And I have a 16-year-old. She's a junior. She just started driving this year. And we have a great relationship, and we talk about everything. We talk about social media. We talk about apps. We talk about drugs. Everything. Because communication is key. But for a lot of parents, it's difficult. And listen, I'm not going to get too preachy. This is it. Right? I know, and this is what I tell young people. Your parents may not know how to talk to you the way that you want to. And it was the same way with me when I was a kid. But everybody in this room and your parents have scars. We've all been through some stuff. We've seen some stuff. And sometimes we're just not able in a position to relate that to the young people, like, my gosh, I just don't want you to make the mistakes I've made. You know? And that feeling that you have for them, you have to transfer that to them. You have to make them understand that. And that will help them make better decisions. Don't just leave it to the teachers to tell them about drugs. Don't just leave it to this one or that one. You got to actually have the conversation. And that doesn't just apply to young people. That applies to really everybody. So, recapping, the problem is going to get worse. We're doing quite a bit in Ocean County. A lot of good people working on a lot of different programs, a lot of different ways. There are shortages of beds. There are shortages of detoxes. There's a number of ways that we can fight this problem. Prevention, law enforcement, recovery. For me, the fight I'm fighting is to fight 5 years from now and 10 years from now, when we look back. Because we didn't get here overnight, and we're not going to fix it overnight. So I hope that helped some of you. I certainly will take a question or two if you have any. Other than that, thank you for having me. Hi. Good. Yeah.
Yeah, good. So a couple of questions, and if you have the information, I'm just curious, of the over 200 deaths, male, female, and age groups, because part of me thinks that it spans across different generations. So that's one question, if you have the information. The other question is, we have an 11-year-old at home. She is very strong-minded. She rolls her eyes at me every single day. And I just have to try to take deep breaths.
Yeah.
So the question that I have is, in East Brunswick, and I don't know this, and I should probably know this, what can we say to her other than to say, Ariana, I saw somebody in my life who did drink too much, and this is the impact that it had, and that is why I choose not to drink, because I associate the bad memories. So I do it, like you said, we all have scars. So what can we do what kind of seminars can we provide to middle schoolers, and should those be different seminars than high schoolers? Part of me thinks that it should be a young person who is in recovery sitting there that would be more credible than a mom or a dad. I mean, I hope I'm credible to my daughter. I always tell her the truth no matter what. She knows that.
Yeah.
But she sees me as mom, and I do have the conversations with her. And we have the conversation about behavior. We have the conversation about biology.
Good.
That some of it could be, So those are the two questions that I have.
Well, the first one, I don't have specific stats for you. I do know the age range certainly varies. So we have just as many 30, 40-year-olds. Not as many, we don't see ninth graders overdosing on heroin on a regular basis. Do high schoolers take drugs? Is there a percentage of them, and do some of them ultimately overdose? Yes. But the number itself, it ranges very, very widely. And unfortunately for the male-female breakdown, I can't say for that. But you can find those stats online. I know there have been a number of articles and those sorts of things, and we put stuff out on our website regularly about updates, so you can get them. And you might not be able to get them from 2016, but the epidemic has really started rising, 2008, 2009, 2010, so you can get past years. Regarding your daughter, daughters just give their moms more trouble. And and they're very loyal to their dads, even when their dads don't deserve it. Even if they're a bad dad, they're still loyal, and it drives moms crazy, I know. And you go through a difficult fighting relationship back and forth for years and years and years, and then only in your 20s and 30s will she really be a good friend to you. So you got a while. Stick with it, though. Stick with it. The best part about having a conversation with your daughter, sometimes you don't have to have a direct conversation. Sometimes you ask her, who's the most popular kid in school? What happened on the bus today? You do an end around, and you get them talking in general or just about things that are important to them. And then at some point, this is how it works, and it's more long-term, and this is not scientific, but talk to them in general about stuff that's important to them to keep the communication lines going. Who's your favorite teacher? Why? Did anybody do anything funny in school today? What'd you have for lunch? What all of those things. Because that opens the dialogue. So when she has a problem or somebody asks her to do something wrong, she'll come to you just because it'll be natural. Does that make sense? So keep doing what you're doing, but you're not necessarily going to, because she's going to say, when you tell a young person about drugs, they've been hearing don't do drugs, don't do drugs, don't do drugs since elementary school. And everybody knows drugs are bad, drugs are bad, drugs are bad. But that's a different story than, hey, at some point, somebody is actually going to ask you to do drugs. And this is what it's going to feel like, and those sorts of things. So keep the dialogue going. And last point I know, regarding some of the programs in school and that sort of thing. Not all programs will get all kids. So if I go to a school assembly and there's 400 kids in the gym, I know I'm probably going to get through to quite a few of them. But some kids are going to be in the back and they'll be like, who's this guy? I don't care about it. And for me, my target is always the person that's on the edge, that may get asked to do drugs later that night, and they're not sure. And they may remember something. Or if I come in and I build on what the teachers have said, what the parents have said, what a faith leader has said, if there's somebody like that in the family, and help build their value system. So there are programs, and I'm certain, without even knowing, that there's programs in the school and throughout the county. Yeah, there you go. Go ahead. She's going to give you some additional information.
I'm going to interrupt for a
Yes.
second. So there are a lot of different programs that we have implemented, and to speak to your point that it is very helpful to hear it from people other than mom, and even sometimes other than just your teacher. They have a very high level of respect for their teachers, but we do need to hit kids at different places, like you said, and try to get them from different angles. So a couple different things that we have implemented in the past few years. Through the work with the Municipal Alliance, we've brought in a group called Young People in Recovery, which is a sobriety group of people in their 20s and 30s who are working a recovery program, who are local New Jersey students, have grown up in the area, tell a story that our kids, for the most part, can really relate to, what happened to them, where they wound up, and how they're now living a sober life. They can do a question and answer session. We actually, Jennifer Stetson and I went to a group of students at the high school and talked to them about how would you prefer to get this information? Would you prefer to get it in a large group so that you're not feeling like you're singled out, or would you prefer it in a small group? And the kids unanimously talked about small group is better. They feel that they could ask those individualized questions. So that's why we're bringing that group into the health classes so that they can have those individualized conversations. We're also doing programming between our high school students and our Hammarskjold students, where we're bringing high school students down to Hammarskjold to deliver assembly programs where those high schoolers are talking about their stories, things that have happened to them, whether it be an incident of bullying, whether it be, another kind of insecurity. And then after that, we set them up with counselors, and they have the opportunity to then come and talk with those high school students, build those connections, and get advice with counselors there. Some of my counselors are here tonight, student assistance specialists, so if you had questions after, you could even speak with them. And another program that we've brought in at Churchill and the high school is called Sources of Strength, which, as you talked about, the positive adult mentors, this is a evidence-based suicide, drug and alcohol, and HIV prevention program, which links our students with positive adult mentors in the buildings. And what they do basically is provide all different types of activities during the school year that promote positive coping skills, because what we're finding is a lot of our students don't have good coping strategies to the stresses that have presented themselves to our kids, and they are under a tremendous amount of stress and they need help figuring out how to cope with stress. So we have these positive adults in the school that are willing to come to these events, sit with the kids, talk with them on a different level than they would in the classroom, and we're getting a lot of positive response from that. So just a couple things we're doing, so sorry to interrupt.
No.
Questions?
I know just before, while she's getting the mic, I know for somebody that's 10, 11, 12 years old, sometimes the conversation may start with, hey, does anybody use bad words on the bus? Have you ever seen cigarettes? Do you know anybody that smokes cigarettes? Because you're not going to get the 11-year-old, hey, Mom, somebody brought Coke in school today, right? So you want to talk to them because there's chances are they know, just like you always know a little bit more than your parents think that, or you're always a little bit further than your parents are comfortable with. I was that way. My daughter is this way. Kids are always a little bit more worldly, a little bit further along than you think because you see them, they're your kids. You want to see them as still innocent and those sorts of things, at least up to a certain age. But start the conversation with those sorts of things at that age. Bad words, cigarettes. Have you ever seen marijuana? You don't do it as if she's seen it or done it. You've seen, hey, what's going on out there? And just to get her talking, just to get her, the actual process of talking is what's most important. Yes?
I have the same question regarding these conversations. For last couple of years, when Halloween approaches, we hear the news that through the candy, all these drugs are provided and all that. I would like to know whether it is a fact or just a fake news.
Through candy?
Yeah. For last couple of years, we are hearing when Halloween approaches that, oh, there are drugs in the candies, so you should not go for trick or treat and all that.
Right. I'm sorry. You said Halloween, trick-or-treating?
Yes.
Yeah. Does that happen? Yes. Is it rare? In my opinion, yes. I'm not 100% familiar with the community up here to know how many incidences you might have had where people have tampered with the candy, whether it be for drugs or anything dangerous. I know this past Halloween, I did hear of one case, but I hadn't heard. Most of them are, just urban legends and those sorts of things. For us, my daughter does go out trick-or-treating, and we probably throw out half of it. We do a full inspection. We're not afraid to throw out something, even if it's close. It just, it's not worth it. But that's an individual, that's a subjective question because it depends on the community. When I was a kid, see, we're gonna extend this, right? We used to go to the real high class neighborhoods, so we get the full candy bars, right? You get the good stuff, right? Yeah. Nobody wants a lollipop or a toothbrush, God forbid. So it depends. It depends. But and this is unofficial. I have no research or anything like that. That's still very rare. But if there's any doubt, just err on the side of if you're afraid or worried or something's happened or you heard something and you need to throw out the whole bag of candy, throw out the whole bag and go to the store and buy a couple bags. You know what I mean? Just to be safe. But yes. Oh, up here. Okay.
I just wanted to know, when you talk about transparency, are you talking about us telling kids what we did? Like, are there
Right. Yeah. A great question. Great question.
And I teach
Yeah.
here, so not that I did anything. I want
Yeah.
other people to know what they're
I
supposed
totally
to
understand.
say.
It depends. It depends on the age and how developed they are. Now, you're not going to go home and tell your 12-year-old, when I was in high school, I did, 60 lines of Coke a week, right? You're just not going to do that. I would start in terms of decision making, just in general, and start them young and decisions on everything. Why you're buying this car, what you're purchasing in the grocery store, you're strengthening their decision-making skills themselves. When you're talking about transparency, as they get older, yes. Because if you've made, and you have to use discretion and discernment, right? Some of you did some stuff like, oh my God, right? And some of you didn't. But if you were that age, and somebody came to you and told you the exact same thing, would that have affected your decision? It might have. It might have. I'm just saying, with this generation, be real. It's not just a saying. Real talk, be real. You actually have to be real. And for me, I'm fortunate because I can go because I've never done drugs, so I can just spew it like I want to. But I know people that have thought about this. Well, Rory, you're telling me, should I be honest, this and that? Should I tell him that I smoked weed? Should I tell him that I used to get drunk? And for me, you have to make that determination based on your child and how old they are. But at some point for them, they know all these people are doing these drugs anyway. And it's going to be, right, you open yourself up to criticism, right? And you open yourself up to being a hypocrite. But you have to explain to them, I'm telling you this because this was a bad decision, and thank God that I survived. But you know what? My friend didn't. And my friend laid in the morgue for 3 weeks because nobody knew he was dead because he was living on the streets. And his parents didn't know where he was. And you know what? You have 5 people that try drugs, and 3 of them become addicted and 2 don't. Are you going to be one of those 3 or one of those 2? Not everybody ends up like mommy or daddy. And you know what? There was a cost. I have regrets today. I wish I didn't do it. I spent money. I hurt people. Those sorts of things. And you don't have to tell them everything. But for me, some things you can tell them. And you know, maybe you don't tell them about all the worst things that you've been through and done and some of your really most terrible decisions. But, you know, our kids are a lot like us, right? And they copy us and they look at us. And you have to think, what would I know? What would I wish I knew when I was their age that might help me so that I wouldn't have made those decisions? And my transparency comment is this. Don't play the role. If you're not going to be honest, it's better to not say anything at all. But don't try and play the role. If you're going to speak to them and you're going to talk to them and talk to them about things that they care about and are interesting and everything, just be honest with them and open. You have to be a bit more honest and open than you're comfortable with. Because that's what this generation demands. It's what they demand. I talked to a group of seniors, and they give me about 6 seconds before they decide if I'm worth listening to or not. And then they're on their phones. So I have to, and usually for me, when I talk to high schoolers or somebody like that, and they don't know me, I come in. If I don't have to wear the suit, I won't. But a lot of the times, because of my job, I have to go in with a suit, and I don't want to just be another suit. So I usually go in and I immediately start off with something vulnerable for me so that I can close the gap and be like, this is why I'm talking to you. Here's the deal. First of all, they're not paying me any extra. This is that. I've lost people. I lost an aunt. There's people that I wish were here right now that aren't. I have people that have done some really bad things. I usually have to come off with some kind of vulnerability or some kind of honesty just to close the gap quickly because I only have a certain amount of time to get in and get out. And I want to spur a conversation. But for you all in your homes, it's a longer conversation. So you have to decide, you know, and it doesn't have to just be negative decisions. It could be positive decisions as well, where you've done things right. Hey, this was the time I did this. Let me share it with you. And this is where I think it could help you when you're making decisions. So I hope that helps.
Hi.
Hi.
I know when someone drinks, you can smell alcohol and your speech is slurred and you can't walk. I don't understand what this looks like. And I'm thinking about last week when I was stunned and went to the internet when the pilot and the wife OD'd. Can you still fly a plane? Like, I don't understand how people keep functioning and what does it look like? And do I walk past it and don't even know it?
Yeah, you could, because there's a lot of functioning alcoholics and drug addicts. There's people that do, I mean, there's people that do 15, 20 bags a day of heroin, easily. And it's not unheard of to have 30 or 40 bag day habits. There's functioning drug addicts. And the thing with, especially with heroin, the high is so incredible. It's amazing. It takes you to places that you know, wow. But after that high, and after you've experienced all of those things and you've been on that drug for a while, most heroin addicts are taking the drug so they don't get sick. They're no longer not getting high, it's just so they don't get sick. They're taking the drug to maintain, and unfortunately they're deteriorating along the way. But I can't, I'm not a doctor, and I'm not a specialist in terms of treatment, so I can't speak to that with full authority. I would just be speaking as just a normal person on the street. But I do know there are people that are addicted to multiple substances, and there are some that are functioning that you wouldn't know it. And unfortunately, you know, sometimes that may put you in a place of danger, and sometimes you would just never know it. You would do what you're doing, and they're doing what they're doing.
Thank you. Thank you.
In the back, yeah.
First, I want to say that I love that you said that our children are going to know the person pretty well who offers them for the first time drugs or alcohol. I love that. I don't know if you can answer this question or not, but I think it's really important that we teach our kids. I have two 16-year-olds. That we teach our kids the verbiage, like what to say when they're in a situation. And I know they do role play, and that's cute in Hammarskjold, and I think that's great. But maybe you have older people that come into the high school that can say, hey, listen, I was in a room and this is what happened and this is what I saw. And I'd like to tell my boys, look for it, right? Be on the way. And I love that you said be aware, because you're going to know the person.
Right.
So I want to give them almost like bad word, but ammunition on how to get out of the situation, what to look for, and what to say. That's cool, because I'm going to give them something to say, and they're going to think I'm nuts because I'm a mom and I don't even know what to tell them. But I want like a cool kid on stage talking to my 16-year-olds, telling them, this is what you do, this is how you can get out of it. I tell my kids, tell them that your mother's going to drug test you. Just come up with something crazy to try to get out of it. But that's not probably the best thing to say. So I would love to hear more of how to give them.
And I know you
the
want to
words.
weigh in on this. I know one of the things that I've heard quite a bit is some parents have an emergency word or code. So if I text my mom 12 12 12, she knows, call, I'm coming to get you, we got a family emergency, whatever the case may be. So you can have a family code word, or if, for teenagers or something like that. If they're younger, you just go get them, hey. But you could have a code word or a code number or something where you could just text it very, innocently or whatever. It takes 2 seconds. And then all of a sudden my dad's calling. He's coming to get me now. I'm sorry, I got to go. Whatever the case may be. So, and I'm sure there's more. I mean, we could probably, that could be a lot more extensive talking about how you actually go through the decision making of the kids. But I just wanted to throw that one idea out there. Yeah. Okay. Were you going to say something, Danielle?
I was just going to say that when we have the group Young People in Recovery come into the health classes, that is when a lot of those conversations take place, because they're talking to almost peers that are not that much older than them, and they are in the small group setting, so they feel more comfortable having those conversations and getting, those types of responses and ideas from them. But I'm also going to turn it over to Peggy Haas, who's one of our student assistant specialists, who talks a lot about these issues.
Hi, I work here at Hammarskjold, and I've been here since 1989, so I've dealt with quite a few students. One of the things that, as a teacher and as a counselor and also as a mom, that I always explain to my kids is there are going to be times when you're going to somebody's house that you're friends with. You want to hang out with them. You might have been surprised that you got the invite to the cool kids party, and you don't want to be the nerd. You don't want to be the dork who says no. And as the parent, you want to say, oh man, you know that it's not a good group, but you want to give your kids the opportunity to make their mistakes, but to have the out. For both of my kids, our code word was, I have a stomach ache. If they called me up from wherever they were with a stomach ache, because you can't see it, and it's not something that you can be like, oh yeah, you don't have a fever. The stomach ache was their thing. I would show up, no questions asked. And that was the hardest thing as a mom, is not asking the questions. Because I wanted, who was doing it, what were they doing, and thank you, you made the right decision. And you know what? I'm also Abby's ride home. So Abby, you can come with me too. And then, you're welcome. Okay, and then I would make sure that I'm bringing some of her friends home or his friends home if they also felt uncomfortable in the situation. Save face for the kids, and also help them to understand that they're not going to get the 10th degree when they get home. As far as to your question, one of the things that I do when my kids were younger, and as part of my counseling groups here, is at dinner time or when we had the crazy schedule with both my kids playing travel soccer and ending up in different parts of the state half the time, we would do best and worst. So at dinner time, we would go around the table and everybody, my husband and I included, would talk about the best part of their day and the worst part of their day. And they would be thrilled to hear, wow, Mom, you had a bad day, and it would get them started. It wasn't the conversation, so how was school today? Fine. What'd you do? Nothing. Any problems? No. Do you have a lot of homework? Yes. Okay, and that was a conversation. It's an interrogation when you do it. But when you have the conversation where everybody's talking and it's, oh, wow, I had a really tough day today, something happened, and I start talking, and then, but here's the good part of my day. And then all of a sudden it opened up the dialogue. And there were times where we would be done with dinner and we'd still only be on the second person going around the table. So it was a very nice way of opening the conversation without it being the interrogation that we're all guilty of doing as parents.
With you, I wanted to add in, as a parent, you have to give yourself more credit. You're always going to doubt yourself that you're making the right decisions, right choices, but I would say 99% of the time, you are doing it. And everybody that's sitting here right now, you wouldn't be sitting here if you didn't care. You're probably already making that right choice if you're sitting here. The question is, everybody that's not in these seats that are empty, are they making that right choice? Because you care and you're looking for more information. However, a lot of the kids that you're seeing in the schools right now, the LEAD program, which was formerly DARE, there's kind of DARE in LEAD in New Jersey, teaches a Too Good for Drugs curriculum. And a lot of the staff at the East Brunswick High School is already trained in that. And in that program, they teach peer refusal strategies. There's about 8 or 9 different refusal strategies. Things like walk away, make an excuse, things that you and I use every day of our lives. You want to go see the mother-in-law, you make an excuse, right? All those different things. And that's what I joke with the kids. I said, as I was going through these curriculums and when I was learning to be a lead instructor, I use them every day. I might use multiple ones every day, depending on what's going on. But they're out there, and your kids are a lot smarter than you think, and you potentially give them credit for. But you're probably on track, majority of you are on track with knowing your kids better than anybody else. Are you going to have problems down the line? Sure. Every kid has that problem. But that's the learning experience, and that's where you got to coax them back into the lane and say, this is where you should be. Unfortunately, when you mix that with drugs or alcohol, and that drug problem starts and takes hold, or they're hanging out with the wrong crowd, that's when it's hard to get them back off into the roadway again. They're off track, and then they're derailed for a long period of time. And that's why we're talking about this now, the prevention side, because it's too late sometimes once they're already off. There's hope, and that's what Rory's message was. There's hope, because you got to have it. If you don't have it, we're not going to succeed in life in anything. We're just going to give up. You might as well raise the white flag. However, you're going to be able to do something about it. But you got to attack it from all levels. The prevention, we're doing our part, which I can elaborate on before we leave. And then the treatment side is huge. But we got to do more on the treatment side because we already are in the epidemic now. So.
Yeah.
I think that would happen. I don't know how my daughter would react, right?
Uh-huh.
So, because I do get told this. My daughter will say to me, Mom, well, you were a nerd, because she knows I got really good grades and didn't drink, didn't do drugs, really was a good kid. I mean, I spoke my mind, I was high strung, but I never did any of that stuff. So I can't. So my husband, who's right here, he'll be like, Anna, you don't know what's out there. And he's right, because I didn't attend the parties. I was stuck at the library at Rutgers studying to get my GPA of 3.9. So I can't relate. So that's scary for me, because I don't know what she's going to be walking into. Because she's not me. My daughter is not me. She's a social butterfly. Part of me thinks that she's going to want to attend parties. So anyway, so if she does see a good friend that she respects, and then all of a sudden, because that's my fear, and it causes me anxiety, frankly. Eventually, I'm not gonna be with her when she goes to college. I'm not gonna be there to say, you know, Ariana, you're about to make a wrong decision, right? And,
Right.
and I think the concerning part for me is the drugs and alcohol, from what my husband tells me, and Officer Hoover and others, is for some of these decisions, they're a lifetime, it could ruin a person for
Right.
forever. So it's not like, oh, well, I'm just going to make a decision now and it's just going to be a silly decision. No,
Right.
it could be a forever. So if she does see a friend that does drugs and she has respect for that friend,
Yeah.
how is she going to look at that, right? And let's pretend the person is smart, because I
Right.
think in some cases these kids are smart, which boggles my mind, right? They're
Right.
smart, they know better, but they still do it.
Right.
I don't get that. I really don't get that.
Well, a couple of things. First of all, you don't always have to have the terrible story to get through the kids. You don't have to be the one who's ruined your family, destroyed yourself, hurt yourself, and then recovered. A lot of your good decisions can also be shared, and those can be stated as, this is why, I've had a great life, or I've had troubles, but I haven't had to deal with this because this was a right decision. So you don't discount when you've made right decisions. Not everybody needs to bring in somebody in here who, I was addicted, I lost my family, blah, 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 because some kids aren't going to relate to that either, Depending on the age of the individual, what I tell young people when I'm talking to them is, I tell them to flip it. When somebody asks you to do drugs or to try drugs, or even just to, you're underage and they want you to start drinking, I tell them to come back twice as strong. So you say, listen, I'm not going to do that. But not only am I not going to do that, I don't want you to do it either, and here's why. I care about you, we're friends. If you go down this road, then I'm not going to be able to hang with you, and those sorts of things. So I tell them to go on offense, actually. When somebody, don't be afraid and defensive. Now you know it's coming, right? And when you go home and you talk to your kids, somebody's going to ask you to do drugs more than once. It's coming. You're going to be asked to drink probably 100 times. You're going to be asked to smoke or do drugs dozens of times. You know it's coming. This is what I want you to do. And if it's somebody you care about and a friend, I tell them, go on offense. Like, you care about that person. Not only is it just you, flip it. Let them justify why they have drugs. And, they're going to talk about it. And they're going to have conversations, depending on the age, Not all 15-year-olds are created equal. If you have a 15-year-old that has 3 brothers, and they're all in high school, that person's going to be different than the single child, who might be a girl, who doesn't have a lot of, it just depends, So I hope that helps. But don't discount some of the right decisions that you've made. Those are just as important. All right. Tracy, we'll give you the last one. Oh, yeah, so...
Just to responding to some of the questions, I mean, prevention is all about delaying the early onset of use. So you're not going to be there when they're in college, and you're not going, as you said, to stop them necessarily from picking up the drink or the drug. But someone who takes a drink at 18 is very different from someone who takes a drink at 14.
Absolutely.
And having the open dialogue, the open communication, building in as many protective factors as you can will help reduce the risk factors that the youth face.
So this will be our last question, and then we'll move on to the wrap.
Just a quick question. You spoke about heroin and it being laced with fentanyl. I heard a rumor, I'm not sure if it's a rumor, that they were starting to lace weed with fentanyl. I don't know if it's to sell more, or is there any truth to that?
I hadn't heard that. It certainly wouldn't surprise me. Usually weed is laced with PCP. They mix a lot of different drugs, and then everything gets mixed with alcohol. But I haven't heard that specifically, weed with fentanyl. So just thank you for the question and your comment, because now I'll go back and research it myself. So, have you seen that?
I haven't seen an alert, but I might have read something similar to it. I mean, there's the thing is, in law enforcement, it may not even happen here. It may happen in another state. Nationally, intelligence-wise, things are linked. So somebody brought up the candy idea. Back during the Halloween season, some state put out an alert that, hey, they found candy, that was laced with some drug or was made out of components. If you look at medicinal marijuana right now in certain states, Colorado, different things like that. They're making candy lozenges, right? So it's quite possible that those candy lozenges, even though they are meant for medicinal purposes, are coming over here.
Right.
So you'll get a safety alert during those periods of time. So usually you'll get that information shared. It may not be happening here yet, and it may be a trend. Meth was a huge trend in the Midwest, but we really didn't see it too much in New Jersey because heroin took hold. There was some meth uses down in South Jersey, but it really didn't take hold like it has in the Midwest and the rest of the country because we have heroin.
Right.
So I have not seen anything specific that I can tell you right now that I've seen. I have read about different things being laced. Everybody's trying to, you mentioned fentanyl, but there's carfentanil out there, which is the next stage. It's an elephant tranquilizer that they're mixing it with. So you can only imagine how bad fentanyl is when you have carfentanil. So.
Did you hear fentanyl marijuana in Ocean County from our guy from Coronado?
Somebody had said Lacey specifically.
Okay.
And that it was obviously the typical teenager thinking it's fine, and all of a sudden.
Yeah, I hadn't heard that. Obviously, I know a lot of people in Lacey, and I'm familiar with the area, but I hadn't heard that specifically. And he mentioned carfentanil. It's once something bad comes along, there's always something worse. And carfentanil is 100 times worse than fentanyl, which is 50 times worse than heroin. And it's such a powerful, incredibly dangerous drug that, just exposure to it can really, really jack you up. So, but anyway, thanks for the question. I appreciate it. Yeah.
On that one, just recently, 2 states, one border state, Pennsylvania, the other one, Ohio, knockoffs of Xanax cars, 2 other ones. The counterfeit cars actually thought they were buying prescription Xanax from the streets, and they were actually fentanyl, and the people were overdosing, thinking they were taking Xanax, and they were actually taking fentanyl. So,
It's just pure evil. It's just evil. There's no other word for it.
We could spend 3 hours. I give you an 8-hour day class on different drugs that are out there. There are different people that are trying to manufacture things as oxycodone-looking pills, but it's pure fentanyl. They're stamped. Are you coming across that? No. Is the abuser or the addict coming across that? Potentially. Right? So, do you have anything to worry about that? No. But if you know somebody has an addiction problem and abuses prescription pills, they very well may come across that. It's out there, and there's always something new. Just like bath salts. So you heard about years ago, well, bath salts were basically categorized by the DEA, and they've kind of gone away. But then somebody just reintegrates the ingredients and comes back in and is able to go ahead and slide them in under the schedule rating where they're still selling them in different places under a completely different name. So it's always an ongoing process with all these different illegal substances that are out there.
All right, to all of you parents, thank you so much for coming out tonight and being part of this important conversation. I'd like to thank Rory Wells for being with us. And please, if you ever have questions or concerns about your kids, please reach out to my department, which would be the student assistance specialist or the school counselors, or also please feel free to visit the Municipal Alliance on the East Brunswick Township website, because there's a lot of additional information that we put up there as well, and feel free to join us at a meeting. So thank you and have a good night.
Get involved.
Thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
Really great.